Cuonzo, when you look back at the film from that Tennessee game a couple weeks ago, I guess what are kind of your initial impressions?
Just didn't play well. Give them, of course, credit. They came out with a chip on his shoulder. They played well on both ends of the floor. They set a tone. We just didn't bounce back. But we know we're a better team than what we showed, and it's our job to prove it to Saturday night.
Jack?
Cuonzo, if I recall correctly, you played the last Tennessee game off of an 8-day layoff. Are you guys feeling better going into this game on account of playing more often?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think the layoff had anything to do with the last game because I think they might have had some time off as well. But just, do I feel good about our team? Yes. Yes.
Gabe? Gabe Yarman?
All right, sorry about that. Cuonzo, I know you just play who's on the schedule, and you don't get to pick when you play them. But are there any positives or negatives to playing a team that's coming off a performance like Tennessee had? And I know Rick was pretty hard on his team publicly.
I don't think so, man. You know, this thing can go different ways. Just like when we played them the first time, we didn't play well, and thought we played a really good game at Arkansas. I really don't think so, man. You play and compete. I think more than anything is just the mental focus of your guys. You have to know the pulse of your team, and Rick has been doing this for a long time at a high level. He knows his personnel. He knows how to push buttons, and he has the personnel to do what he needs to do for his team. But I don't think so. I've seen it go different ways, and it's just a matter of us being prepared to play a basketball game.
Eric?
Cuonzo, you mentioned Yves Pond's ability compared to, I think it was Drew the other day. Just what do you see in him just compared last year to this year?
Pons, I mean, I think he's the same level of defender. I just think he does it at a high level. But as you get older, you gain more wisdom, experience, confidence. Just familiar with the league, you become one of the guys, so to speak. And I just think, I mean, he's the same player, just a talented player, just growth every year. You've seen it, the maturation of his game from one year to the next. And he affects the game on both sides of the basketball.
Dave Matter?
Hey, Cuonzo, X's production just hasn't been quite there the last couple of games. Is he just in a little bit of a slump, or is that a concern?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's a concern. And I think for him, and obviously I talked to him, and he just needs to play with speed. He's at his best when he's up and down the floor playing and pushing and making plays and not necessarily getting consumed with whether or not to turn the ball over, because he's a guy that he'll have turnovers because of how he plays so aggressive. And we want him to push, so it might be a turnover with him pushing the ball, but we benefit in other areas. But just need him to be aggressive. He's a guy that he's a point guard in position for us, but he's a guy that has to be ready and built to score the ball. When he's looking to score, he's a different player.
Colin?
Hey, Cuonzo, when you go about preparing for this Tennessee team, is the message to your guys that they're not going to play like they did 2 games in a row and maybe not again this season, or do they even need to be told that?
We just watch the film and figure out what's best for us and how to win the basketball game, because everybody plays different. Florida plays somewhat of a different style than what we play. Do you take notes from how Florida played the game? Yes. Do you take notes from the Vanderbilt game and games like that? Yes. And you study, but you also take notes of what we did and did not do well. And what we know, they're a talented team. So it's not a case of, okay, they're a bad team that hadn't played well. I mean, it's one game. That's how you have to look at it. And our guys are mature enough to understand it's one game.
Mike Reeves?
And Cuonzo, how different have the road games been so far in league play, given our current circumstances? And is it easier, maybe a bad word, but to go on the road than it normally would have been, because road teams are having some success in the conference this year?
I think with road teams all across the country, I think it has more than anything to do with the lack of crowds. I would safely say that, because you have teams that don't have a lot of experience of winning games on the road, and it just shows you the magnitude of what a great fan base can do for you and getting you over the hump and winning basketball games. So I think that part is obvious, but so it gives you a sense of calmness to understand that the game is literally played on the floor. And what I mean by that, you don't have to worry about the peripherals. The crowd knows that somebody getting to you mentally. You can just play the game. And I like our chances, not because we have experience, guys, just because you don't have to deal with that factor of it. And again, it just shows the impact of a fan base.
Mitch?
Conzo, one thing that the numbers would suggest is that you all have done a better job of sharing the ball since that last Tennessee game. I think you had 5 assists in that game, but have had at least double digits in each of the last few. I guess, was that, kind of a conscious adjustment or something you brought up to their attention after that game?
That was something we talked about when the season started, sharing the basketball, making plays. And really, if you have the ball in your hand more than a second or two, that means you drive into the basket. And if you're not doing that, then it means you have the ball in your hand too long, unless you're a post guy backing the guy down. And it's just really simply saying, move the ball, share the basketball, because you have good enough players where the guys can make plays. But again, that was a game. You watched the first 2 possessions of that game. We didn't set a tone, and it just went from there.
Sweetie?
Hey, Conzo, on that Tennessee film, do you maybe do something extra with that and in terms of just breaking it down or kind of using it as motivation or anything?
Well, again, my job is to put us in position as a coach to say, here's what we need to do to win and be successful. If extra motivation, I just think that's hard when we didn't play well as a team. So when I said team, that means the players on the staff. So we didn't do a good job of preparing and all those things. But if you have to find extra ways to motivate a guy that lost a basketball game, I don't care if you lose by 20 or by 5, man. If you don't hate losing, then why are you really doing this? I mean, yes, it's a sport, but that has to pain you just to lose a game. And I don't care if it's at the buzzer or you lose by 15 or 20. So yeah, you identify what needs to be identified, then you go from there. But if I have to give extra motivation to guys because they lost, and they're probably in the wrong program.
Eric?
Conzo, a lot's obviously been said about how well Jeremiah is playing right now. I think he had 9 points, 4 rebounds the first time you guys played Tennessee. If he has a performance like he did against Arkansas or South Carolina in this rematch, does it add more validity to the kind of what a good stretch he's on?
Well, I mean, he's a good basketball player. I think that's safe to say. He's a guy that's matured every year. I mean, he's gained wisdom over the course of 3.5 years now. He's experienced now. I would imagine he'll see double teams, different things coming at him in this game, and he's prepared for it now. But again, whether he scores 10 points, 15 or 20 points, it's the other guys, because if there's a double, his job is making great decisions out of that. There's other guys' job to make the shot, get offensive rebounds on the backside of, because they have 2 on him, and our 4s and 3s need to do a great job of getting offensive rebounds. So, but I think he's playing well because he's playing hard. He's playing to an exhaustion where all of a sudden, coach, I need a sub, give me a blow. He's playing at that level. He's doing it without fouling, because teams do different things. And teams will throw the ball in the post to guys that really not post players just to try to get him in foul trouble, to get him out of a comfort zone. But he's done a tremendous job, along with playing well, but keeping his composure.
Gabe?
Conzo, I know it's down the road, but and nothing's been like officially decided, but have the coaches or the league had any talks about either how or when you make up some of these games that have been missed, and also what happens when you go into the league tournament and different teams have played different number of games and how you work out seeding?
Good question, but we haven't talked about it. I'm quite sure from an administrative standpoint that they've talked about it. I mean, I don't, and again, nobody said this, but I'm not sure if there will be a conference tournament, because if you have to make up games, and how do you pick a true win unless somebody plays 18 true games and win it? So that part is probably unknown right now, but I would imagine as we get closer to that, they'll make decisions, and we'll meet about what's best. I know from an administrative standpoint, they'll meet about it and figure out what's best. Because I really feel like, South Carolina is as good a team as anybody in our league. And that's a tough win, and they hadn't played enough games. They hadn't had enough reps under their belt as a team, but that's also a case of a team that having enough time to practice together, as talented as they are. So that's, I just think it's different times, and people probably laughed about it when Mike Krzyzewski, I think he might have said it, but the ACC talked about every team being in the NCAA tournament. You look at it now, why not? Or at least more than 68, because again, there's so many unknowns. How do you keep a team like a South Carolina who hadn't played a lot of games, but they're very talented? How do you keep them out? So I just think those are the things that really have to be talked about, because I would be very upset if I'm Frank, and I'm not, speaking for Frank in any way, shape, or form, but that's a talented team. I hadn't had a lot of games. It's not because I missed because of something we did. It's because of a virus. So how do you keep a team out?
If I can follow up, kind of the flip side with your team, and there might be others in this situation, how concerned would you be all of a sudden if the last 3 weeks of the season you find yourself having to do something like play 5 games in 10 days or something like that to make up games?
Oh, as long as everybody else doing it, I'm fine with it. I have no problem with it. Our guys are mature enough to know this is what we have to do, and everybody's doing it, then we have to do it. So I would have no problem with that. I mean, more than anything, you want the well-being of your players to have fresh legs, fresh minds, and stand away from injuries. But if it's something we have to do, then we have to do it.
Colin.
Hey Gonzo, you talked about Pons a little bit already. He was averaging four plus blocks the first 3 SEC games. As you go back and watch, have teams been doing something different to draw him out of the paint, get him away from the rim so that he's less of an impact there in that facet of his game?
Well, I just think in the last games that I've watched, he's guarding guys that are really perimeter guys. Like when you, like for example, Arkansas, Vance Jackson's a perimeter guy. Maybe on tape, those guys are perimeter players. So now he's out on the perimeter guarding guys that shoot threes. Florida had, a lot of perimeter guys. They were down some guys, so he guarding, perimeter guys. So it keeps him on the perimeter. But he's a good shot blocker, so it's not like he's jumping for everything. He also defends on the perimeter. So now I'm going to perimeter guy, I have to defend on the perimeter and do my job. So I think it's probably more than that, than him not having the ability to get block shots. I think it's more who he's defending.
Anything else for Coach?